Okay. Okay, there's something there. This Claire's asked me to come on and talk about this. It might feel a little bit rushed. It's in 30 minutes, so I'll do the quick version. But I am going to hang around after on for any more direct questions. But I don't know whether some people in the room listened to it early on. Some people are really, really experienced, and some people maybe knew myself. But I've been in property since 2012 myself, and work in properties, mainly flips to start with, and I always wanted to grow and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And I thought, well, how do I do this? I was one of these investors that was making some profit on one deal, move it on to the next, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And I wasn't actually making any money for myself. It wasn't making a difference to my lifestyle. So I thought, well, okay. So I actually employed one of these terrible people called a coach. And actually I was amazed that I parted with quite a lot of cash, and someone sitting on the other side of a Zoom, I was actually amazed at how much impact they could have had on my whole journey, really, just because they were working on me and my mindset and how to structure things. And this picture alone on the front of this screen is one of 6 houses that we put together. We took on a really distressed site, and we sold them all for £4.5 million. We had completed on one sale just before we went into lockdown, and we had to sit and wait for the other ones to go through. And just the finance costs alone from March last year to November were £100,000 just for holding the site. And you know what? Not once did we have a sleepless night, because it was structured in such a way that there was no risk, or very limited risk. With limited risk is limited profit. But I was much more content to focus on the risk element as opposed to the profit. And after going through COVID, it's given me so much more COVID. And since COVID, we've done 11 projects since COVID. And it's just been, I just think it's a little bit more organic. I say it's organic, but it's been really fast in the last 4 years for us. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. So what is the project? I'll explain how we managed to de-risk it, because I want to hopefully inspire other people who are maybe in a project. You've been doing projects yourself, much more smaller scale, and you're thinking, okay, but how do we do it a little bit bigger? And I'll just show you how I did that. I'll show the numbers on this particular deal. I'm not that fussed whether you share them or not. But the reason why it's a good deal is we got the vendor included, because it's a very, very obscure, different circumstance, and it's very interesting, and she did quite well out of it also. But it also helped us achieve the deal, so I can't complain. And ultimately, when we went into this project, we didn't have any of our own cash to get into it, and we didn't have a big timeline to work towards the deadline that we were given in order to make the deal happen. So we had to go externally, and mainly to peer-to-peer investors with one institutional finance. And we used crowd property at the time, not the crowd property where they use their institutional lending arm, as opposed to where they put a deal online and lots of people can put in lots of little amounts of money. It wasn't that. A little bit about what's next in the Q&A. The Q&A will probably come afterwards in the rooms. I'm happy to hang around. So what I haven't done is a little bit about me, tiny little bit about me. I actually come from a football background, played professionally for 11 years, but you wouldn't have seen me in your match of the day on Saturday night. I wasn't that good. I wasn't good enough. So I played most of my football in League One and League Two, which is the 3rd and 4th tier of English football. Yes, it was full time and earned me a half decent salary, but never anything that was ever going to go anywhere. And I earn more now in property than I would in football. My career ended abruptly, and that was when it really started. It showed up to me that, God, I need to do something after football, because I got injured in the March. My contracted pay ended on June the 30th, and then it just goes to zero. Because if you're not physically fit to do your job, you don't get paid. Fact. So there was no insurance payout. There was nothing. So it's quite a daunting task. So I definitely, looking back now on reflection, I think I went through a period of trauma, a bit of grief, a bit of denial, all that kind of stuff, and actually put myself in further pain because I went back to university then. And I don't know why I went back to university, but I was 29. I always wanted to go to university, and there's a bit of a thick footballer tag that gets banded around. And I don't know why, but I wanted to just prove it to myself that I could do it. So I went back and graduated with first class honours, and then went on to become a sports science tutor, and then got my PGCE and passed with distinction. So, and then I decided to leave that. I didn't really want to be teaching. I wanted to be in property full time. So it was about 4 years ago when I just sacked it all off and just went head first into property and thought, let's make this work. But this particular site here, I'll show you that this is it as it's nearing the end, or nearing the end as it was. But the top left here, that was a little bit after we took it on. So it had already started. So these two houses are over here. Can you see this cursor where my little green dot is? Okay, so where these two houses were up, they were up. They were actually living in this house. You can see this garden. They were living in it, but it wasn't rigged up. It was rigged up to gas bottles. It was a shambolic situation, really. They did have a massive house here, and with a lot of developments, or with developments that some people don't realise, that if you don't keep the bill going, your finance costs are racking up massively. And the quick story is, they had a bridging loan on here for £1.5 million. It had been like this for a long time. Interest rates were just accruing, and they got into massive financial difficulty. And just by the off chance, a friend of mine said, you probably want to go and have a look at that. I'd never done anything of this scale before. The biggest project that I'd done before this was, less than £500,000. So we went in to see them. There was a husband and wife in here. He was a previous lawyer. And we thought, right, well, and their idea was, we clear the £1.5 million debt, they get to live in that house and we build it out. That was they wouldn't have been able to do that anyway. 4 days later, we get a phone call to say that their husband has dropped dead. Husband dropped dead, and it turned in, so we were going to buy this under market value. It was valued like this at £2.5 million. It's a very, very affluent area of Cheltenham. So this house here, with the one over the garage, would you believe that sold for £835,000? That's what we sold it for. Because for a semi-detached houses with tiny little gardens, as you can see. But it's a nice spot. So they were going into default interest of £37,000 a month. So we came in and waved our white flag and said, right, we'll have a bit of this. So what we decided to do, we made them an offer of clearing all the debt. And we did an overage system where we said, we'll clear all the debt. We had to take on the £37,000 first payment. And this was January the 15th of that year that we went to see it, and we completed on March the 8th. So 6 weeks to put it together in a really distressed circumstances was pretty incredible. And lots of other people have told us they've never seen a deal as complicated as this, but it's amazing what can be done when you've got a lot of good people around you. So I was walking into this thinking, God, I'm not ready for this, surely. And I wasn't on my own, but I wasn't. That was the main lesson from here, is I wasn't on my own. But ultimately, with everything that we look at, everything is deal-led. I always find, especially working with investors, and would people invest in me, in any particular projects that we've got, and would we buy a deal, or if it doesn't quite suit? And it's always got to come down to, in our opinion, in the due diligence process. What happens if, like when we took this on, no one even thought of COVID because it wasn't a thing. But it was always a case of, what if the market drops 5%? Or what if it's 10%? If you think you're going to build it in 12 months, what if it takes 15 months, 18 months? What if a couple of sales fall over and it takes 24 months to sell them out? Looking at everything. And this all data down here on the left-hand side in this white document. Don't know whether any of you guys use like Land Insight, a piece of software that just pulls data from Land Registry, and it gives you the data is absolutely perfect, really, really good for pound per square foot values. You can compare properties in a certain area. You can even only draw in data for house sizes of maybe 1,600 square feet to 2,300 square feet, if that's what your parameters are, just to make sure that there's no anomalies or dodgy data that's going to throw off your numbers. Research, comparables, market trends, valuations from people in the know, because there's a lot of people especially agents, they might go, yeah, I'm sure you'll get £900,000 for those properties. But just by asking them questions, okay, what makes you think that? Have you got anything to back it up? And ultimately, the bottom one down here is huge in property. So I think we're all guilty of it. If we find something we want it. Naturally, we're competitive. We like to win. And sometimes that emotion of wanting to win can make you add £10,000 to your offer. And actually that £10,000 is just going to come out of your profit margin. So just to win an argument in a bar, would you pay someone £10,000? You wouldn't. But people do it in property just so they say, yeah, I won the deal. So managing emotions is quite key in property. And when the numbers are much bigger, it becomes a little bit scarier. This was just a snapshot of the headline numbers. So the total acquisition cost, we had to clear them quite a lot of debt, was totally 1.9 million. If I just explain the deal we did with the lady, where's the sales? I can't even see. Oh, my thing's in the way of the numbers. Do you know when you've got your little cursor and I've got to try and move it around so it doesn't get in the way? But you can see the building work that we had to do to finish off the build was 1.159. Cost of finance, which was £250,000, £60,000 cost of sales. The total cost to us was 3.4 million with a GDV of 4.4. We actually did our numbers based on 3.8 million as a purchase because we didn't want to shoot for the high numbers and bank on that. So you look at it and you think, well, it's a £1 million profit. We didn't get £1 million profit because down here you see the vendor, 3.1. We looked at this deal initially and we thought our costs are going to be about 3.1 million. And we think we're going to sell them for 3.8 and 3.9 million. So we thought there's plenty of profit there. So we said, I'll tell you what, Mrs. I won't tell you her name. We'll tell you what, we will get to a break-even number and we'll give you a third of what we make on top of that. There was me, my business partner, and this lady. And so obviously she's going through the worst time in her life. She's been left dead, by her dad. She's now a widow with a building site. And I don't even know whether she knew all about the numbers. I don't think she knew the level of issues that were all coming thrown at her. And it must have been an awful situation. And developers in Cheltenham were all circling, they were all prowling. And solicitors, actually, even though I didn't have much credibility myself as a developer, I had a very good reputation in the area as a human, which actually stands you in very, very good stead in property. I'm found actually one thing people have been really willing to do in the past 4 years is invest considerable amount of money in us, which is phenomenal. Really, I never would have thought it would be achievable. But what we did, as soon as we got the property, we thought we know we're definitely going to increase the GDV. So we up-spec'd it by up to £2,000 to get the higher GDVs. And that meant that the vendor was going to achieve better. So it was very, very satisfying last year when we handed over a cheque to this lady who was actually very ungrateful, would you believe? Not even a thank you. I thought we completely saved it, but we knew we'd done a good thing. And actually the news of us doing that, it was fantastic for us. But that was one of the ways it helped us get the deal. It wasn't necessarily a way of de-risking it, but that helped us get it. I'll come on to how we de-risked it now. I de-risked it. I thought, well, I want to be a developer. So probably quite a few years ago, and I started thinking, well, how do I get lending if I'm not a developer? I've never built a house out the ground before. So actually, I thought, well, do you know what? I need to find somebody. I need to find an insurance policy, as I call it. So he's still my business partner now. This was the first project we did. So this together, we'd known each other for a couple of years before. And I rang him up one day and I said, Andrew, I said, everything starts with a conversation, right? He said, yes. And we still joke about that one line now. I went, if I was to find a deal that looked good and there was a bit of money to be made in it, if I brought it to you, would you help me deliver it? He's never going to say no to that, is he? And I even joke now, he's probably gone home to his wife that evening and went, yeah, this little upstart who's done a training course thinks he's going to bring me a really profitable deal and I'm going to get involved in it. But ultimately, that's exactly what we did. And we looked at a couple of projects before this one, and we saw it, and we just made it happen. But I needed someone. He's got loads of experience here, but he's made a lot of money, but he's also lost a lot of money in property, which for me was absolute gold. And I'm not going to take the credit for saying focusing on the risk rather than the profit, because that is his words that I'm stealing to share with you now, because it was the best piece of advice ever. And even now, we're constantly we have daily conversations where we have really good conversations where we don't always agree with each other. We're challenging to try and find the happy medium when we're being too risk averse, when we're being too punchy and too ballsy, so to speak, in our approach. And how can you not turn him down? He's a very, very well-educated man. He comes across really, really well. He knows he's basically a Rick's chartered surveyor, but just without the paperwork. He's done all the qualifications. So he was good. He was just there, and he was actually coming out of a couple of deals in South Wales that were causing him quite a lot of issues. So I think the timing was just perfect. He needed someone like me with a bit of energy, a bit of passion, a bit of oomph to get him out of that dark cloud, which we all find ourselves in property. You might have a couple of weeks where weeks go by, maybe months, and then you think, God, what have I been doing? And you're in a bit of a doldrums a bit. And communities like this, sometimes it's someone shares something or you pick up a phone to someone, it actually goes a hell of a long way for inspiration. So originally we looked at this deal 3 ways. We're splitting it 3 ways with the vendor, myself, and Andrew. I'll come back to this one because, this is it. So point number 2 here, the second one down. We then approached a contractor and said, okay, can you give us a quote to build out this site, please? So he gave us a quote. I can't remember what the quote was, but we straight away said, okay, well, 20% of that site is going to be X amount of money. I thought, well, do we want to go into a site where someone else has started the project? We'd heard that there were loads of subcontractors in there. We didn't know how good quality the work was underneath. Did we want to be getting into a site and a build where costs could just go through the roof? And we didn't really want to do that. So we actually sold it to the developer and said, the main contractor, and said, well, do you want to come in on this? And when, if we hit our projected numbers and you hit your build costs that you tell us that you've put in there, if you stand by that and you do it at cost, we'll cut you in as a shareholder. So the third was still going to the old vendor, but then the other 2/3 we were then going to split 3 ways. And actually, we went even further. We decided to find a 4th member and say, do you want to get involved in this? And he's a well-known property investor. And he was like, he had a look at the numbers and went, I'll take a punt. Yeah, why not? And he didn't have to do anything. Put no money in, did nothing. And at the end, took a share of the profit. I personally had one agenda for this, and that was to become a developer and have it on my CV. That was my one agenda. If I said to Andrew, I said, if I can take a few pounds out of this to keep me going over 18 months and I can come out of this with a business, I'm happy. And we did a lot better than that, even though we came through COVID. And it was just bloody brilliant. But it was awful on day one. Never signed personal guarantees to the tune of 2.5 million before. And again, that was one of the reasons why we needed to get more people involved. Because I don't know about you, I didn't have £2.5 million worth of assets. So what this piece of paper that I was signing, I didn't want to put my family at risk, really. So I thought, well, just don't go too crazy. Just cut your teeth, so to speak, and get involved in this. I won't talk about equity and debt on this particular one. But we did have a couple of people who were keen to become equity investors. We didn't get them involved, but we have got them involved in equity processes later, and I'm happy to talk about that a bit later on. Then presenting the deal to the investors. This is when I was working with my coach at the time, and he just made me do a lot of stuff I didn't want to do. I pick up the phone and ring people. We didn't have time. Right now, my process is I start working with people. And some people, they might invest with us after not long of knowing with us. Some people, they might be 12 months down the line and they might potentially think it's a good thing to do. Some people may never invest, but it's definitely my job to fill the pipeline with people and just get to know them. Because like you say, it's a personal thing. Like people, I went to a BNI network meeting just as an invite to my friend, and I'm not a member of a BNI because I can't go hunting for investors. I can't go and say, right, who's going to give me some money now? Come on, £50,000. Come on, let's go. It just doesn't work. And they went, why are you here? And I said, I'm here because I just want people to think I'm a decent bloke. That's it. I said, from that, I said it might spark a conversation further down the road. That people might start finding out about us. They might getting interested about what we're going to do. And we just go from there. But we needed to find out what people need, because some people want high interest rates. Some people want security. Some people want flexible terms on their loans. And I was very fortunate in this period where a lot of people who invested with us at this stage knew the area. So they had massive confidence in, oh yeah, we know those houses are all £700,000. And we sold all of them, all 6 houses for over £700,000. And they're 1,900 square foot houses. And 4 of them have got tiny little courtyard gardens, and it's right on a busy road. It's madness. Like the houses we did were special. They were really nice inside, but I wouldn't want to live there. True. When you're talking to people, rather than asking for money, offer them an opportunity. Ask them for an opinion. Say, oh, can you? And I know you're, because again, it's that you could probably talk for 5 hours on how to pitch or talking with investors. So it's probably better to answer questions later on. But there's a whole process where people think they've got to know everything. They've got to know everything. I've got to provide this excellent deal. But when you tell someone, I've got an amazing deal, what you're actually telling them is that you probably got a really risky deal. People think differently. Some people get excited by big numbers, where if you start offering 12%, 14% to people just walk away thinking you're crazy. That's not sustainable. You don't know what you're doing. Whereas some people probably invest in something and prefer to take a 7 to 8% return, we found. Not everybody, because some people are investors themselves, and especially people in here, you're all property people. You might not be even interested in, say, an 8% return because you probably know a lot more yourself, or you've got other avenues within property or connections where you can earn so much more. Point 3, risk reward. Again, what's the risk? At this stage, we didn't have loads of our own capital in between the investors and the risk. We just had our profit margin, which they all bought into. So we started off on this. We were paying 12% on people. But then as the deal went on, we had development finance at 9%. But then we were to cash fund some of the development through investment at 9%, and then draw down appropriately accordingly. And we were able to move out 12% investors because they had really flexible terms, and we didn't want to be held to ransom of having 3, 4, 6 month notice clauses, because I see it as someone in our situation, and I don't know who's in the room who takes investment off their peers, whether it be family, friends, or other professionals. The one time you don't pay anyone back is the first day that you're finished, in my opinion, because that kind of news to anybody would be awful, and it would travel everywhere. Point number 4, you hear it a lot about knowing, like, and trusting. Are you investable? Because I think a lot of people, they just want to know if things don't go to plan, which in property they don't always go to plan. Are you going to pick up the phone? Are you going to be honest? Are you going to deliver the bad news? But what are you going to do about it? Are you being willing to, I don't know, are you willing to just work all the hours that God sends, giving them 10% of your earnings wherever you're working for how long it will be? And I think of people, you might offer them the best deal in the world, but if you're not the right person, I don't think they'll invest. And for a long-term relationship, I think people do invest in people, but the deal has got to stack also. I understand that. Number 5, which was really, really good, was the credibility. Because if I had gone out pitching for cash myself to deliver this project, I wouldn't have been able to say, yeah, well, I've done it before, because I hadn't. But that's where Andrew came in. So it's quite nice where I really like using Andrew as a selling technique. And I'm like, well, you're not going to invest in me, you're going to invest in us, but you probably should see the other half of me and have a chat with him, because just he's a really, because he speaks well, educated, level-headed. He's not a, yeah, we're gonna make this much money, that sort of bloke, and people like it. They like it, that he's going to look after their money by not being speculative. It's a really nice a nice way to look at it. These are just a few images of the show home. I'll just flick through. Also helps that Andrew's wife is an interior designer. This is something that I'm not very good at. There's quite a lot I'm not very good at in property, actually. I'd like to say the few things that I'm good at, I'm very good at. This is just a bit of feedback of investors in the time, which again, it's always quite good to share. But and I won't go on loads longer, but just tell you a few things that we've springboarded from this. We've done one pub conversion in Manchester, which actually sold. We wanted to get something to retain, but we bought. We did it as a partnership, and we bought a pub in Oldham for £180,000 and spent about £250,000 on it. Had so many issues with planning and solicitors and Section 106, and then we got a down valuation. We're like, oh God! And we got a housing association to rent it, and they gave us a 20-year lease. And then only back in August, September, we sold it for £856,000. Bonkers. Absolute bonkers. They gave us eight years worth of cash flow up front. I thought, well, it's a no-brainer. Let's crack on. But the problem with selling everything is you're not worth anything. You've got a bit of cash in the bank, but you're not worth anything. So we are trying to do more things. So we've just done a 12 studio conversion, again in Manchester. We've got 2 projects running in Cardiff at the moment. We've just taken on a big, large listed building that's going to be converted into a 10-bedroom HMO in Gloucester. We've just taken a buy-to-let in Cheltenham. We've got a plot in London, southeast London, which we bought speculatively without planning, but we've now secured planning for a pair of semi-detached houses. But because the planning process took 9 months, we bought it on a bridge. And we thought, oh, that's eating into the profit a little bit. And we're thinking on that particular deal, if we build it out now, there might be £180,000 profit in it. But again, I don't know about you, all these people out there who are building at the moment, who are telling you what they're building for, I don't know whether they can truly actually tell you that, because they haven't been through the cycle. They haven't got the result of all the increased rises. So actually what we've done, we've actually parked someone's money in that project, and we've written off £30,000 for the next 12 months, because we're going to go back. We've already gone back in for planning to turn it into 5 flats. So our strategy or our thinking is it's going to cost us £30,000 in investor finance. If we fail to get planning, our 180 profit drops down to 150. That's fine. But if we're successful with planning and we build it out, the GDV could increase by £200,000 to £250,000. So we think it's a really, really good risk to take, because we can't control our costs at the moment. We're at the mercy of contractors, and we're at the mercy of materials. And we thought we could easily lose 30 to 50 to £100,000 on the build anyway if we were going to build. So the certainty in delivering the project on that one right now isn't there. So we thought, well, let's just sit tight. Let's just sit tight. Let's follow the curve, so to speak. And I actually spoke to someone the other day, and people want to be trailblazers in the world. I don't. I'm quite happy to be second place. I'm quite happy to be, I might not make the massive money in the world, but you know what? I might not be the first person to go pop as well. And I'm quite happy to do that. I want to be quite aggressive and keep my ear to the ground and move forward. But it's interesting. It's interesting. And I do find that now I've got a business, I've had a business partner for a few years now. People in property are brilliant. Property itself can be pretty boring and can be pretty dull. Especially now when you're looking at pieces of land, it's amazing how excited they get about a land project, and you go and stand in a field and there's absolutely nothing there, no planning permission, just grass, and it's very underwhelming. But I do enjoy it. And it's a good vehicle to make finance with the skill set that I've got. Let me just see what's coming up here. Where to find investors? tell everyone what you do, be open to rejection. Coming from a football world, so Claire, just jump in, by the way, if I'm droning on. I am nearly finished this little bit, but tell me how quickly I need to be.
No, you're fine. Carry on.
Okay. Where am I? Yeah, well, tell everyone what you do, to be open to rejection. Coming from a football world, you've obviously got a bit of an ego to protect. And I don't mean ego as being like a big head. It's like, well, you don't want to make mistakes because it's always social status type thing. And especially when I remember when I first went live on Facebook, in my head, I was like, oh my God, my mates are going to kill me. What are they going to be saying about me? They're going to think I'm an idiot. And they all have. They've all told me that now anyway. But now I've got the results to prove what I've got. They don't really say anything to me anymore. But being open to rejection is everything. And people say to me, said, oh, Shane, you've done quite well in the past in raising some funds. I go, yeah, but there's a hell of a lot more people that have said no. And it's just been really, really, really good. Do what you say you'll do is the best thing, because we've already been through lots of cycles with investors. So I've raised quite a lot of money, but not most of that money is not with us anymore. It's already been paid out with the interest. But those people are they're all on they're all checking in with me. How's it going? Well, please do remember if you've got anything that you think will be suitable for us. So it's really, really nice. Touch points and Invescalator. I don't know whether I've made this up or I think I did, but I don't want to own it just in case it's not me. If you think about a travelator, if you don't know anybody, like lots of people in this room, you don't know me at all, and you all do professionals, but let's just say I just met you somewhere. You are a 0 out of 10. I don't know you. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. But then over a period of time, if you end up becoming an investor of mine and you transfer money to us, that's a 10. But from that stage of 0 to 10, it might be fast or it might be really, really slow. It might never happen. Someone in your family, you might already be at a 6 or a 7 because they already know you and you know what your character and you know everything about you. People who you might get introduced to people to you. And actually yesterday I got a text off a Covenant investor that said, Shane, I've got someone else who'd like to invest. Is that okay? They might be coming in at a 3 or like on a 3 on a 4 on my little scale. But there's never any desperate. Like, I don't think you could ring someone up and say, right, let's go. I've got a deal for you. Are you in? And then the next time you make contact with them, I don't think you can turn around, right, I've got another project. Are you in? I think there needs to be, I actually think it's almost a full-time job, actually, like investor relations, dealing with them, sending them Christmas cards, sending them bottles of wine every now and again, sending them updates. I think the least you can do is actually care about your investors. And I think a lot of people give people a lot of love and attention when they're trying to get cash off them. And then once they've got the cash off them, they don't know. Like these people, they've worked really, really hard for their cash, whether it be £5,000, £10,000, or £250,000. It's irrelevant. And it really annoys me when people who have got smaller amounts of money, they go, well, you probably don't want it now, do you? And I'm like, wow, what do you mean? How much are you willing to invest? And the most recent person was £10,000. I was like, how the hell have you got that? I said, you've done ever so well to get that saved up. Made him feel worthy. And he's really keen to, and he's actually someone I've known for 12 years. I've known him for 12 years, but I haven't had anything to do with him over the last 5. And it's just a really, really, really good, it's an Invescalator, steal it. It might not even be mine anyway. But you maybe say it is mine. I don't know. And this is, this is the bottom left, actually, that Bexley. That's the little bungalow plot that we now got planning for. And last year we ended up just doing a couple of flips. Again, risk management. We didn't want to, we were selling houses, but we didn't want to dive into spending £1 million on a site. So we decided to do a couple of flips. So we actually did like this bungalow top right here. We bought this for £140,000 and we sold it for £375,000. Amazing what we did. And then this one down here, Project Langdon, this was, we bought this for £320,000 and we sold it for £517,500. So the good thing about being in Cheltenham is this is a little bog standard. It ended up being a 3-bedroom house, no parking, just in a good location. You can really add the value if you find the right sweet spot. So that's just like a little. It's a tiny little snapshot of how to de-risk and how we de-risked it. There's so much more I could tell you, but I don't want to bore anybody. And I think there could be, if anyone wants to come in and talk a little bit more about how you would approach something like that, maybe if you want to do it yourself or anything, I'm happy to hang around.
Amazing.
Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can do.
Really good, mate. Yeah, impressive.
Stop the recording, has it gone?